Good evening. Hello again, I like that. It being 7:30, we will resume annual town meeting. We have Article 34 and Article 35, which we'll be covering tonight. And to present Article 34, I'm going to introduce Bob Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. My name is Bob Fowler. I'm Vice Chair of the Tewksbury Planning Board, and I would like to present the article for adoption. Just a little note, the vote of the Planning Board and the Finance Committee and the zoning bylaw was unanimous in support of the articles, both articles. As chairman of the Tewksbury Zoning Bylaw Committee, I move to adopt Article 34 in its entirety. The Assistant Town Manager, Steve Sadwick, will provide a brief overview of the article. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Steve Sadwick, Assistant Town Manager, and I've been with the town of Tewksbury for close to 20 years. I am a certified land use planner, and most recently in 2020 was one of 5 Massachusetts professional planners that was accepted to the Fellows College of the American Institute of Certified Planners. I served as the project manager for the town on this zoning rewrite project. In 2015, the Board of Selectmen recognized that the town's zoning bylaw had become a bit unwieldy after being amended 125 times since 2002. The board created the 5-member zoning bylaw committee with the goal of incorporating diverse and sometimes even opposing points of view. The committee included the building commissioner, who served the town for 25 years in zoning enforcement, representatives from the Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board, a private land use consultant, and a resident that is a certified land use planner and planning director in another community. During its 44 public meetings, the committee had lively discussion amongst the diverse representatives, and every action was voted on by all members. Staff support included myself, Anna McGinty, the town planner, and Don Cathcart, a permit technician from the building department, who has over 18 years of serving both the department and the planning board. Town meeting authorized funding for consultants on this project. One of the consultants worked with the town on the 2003 and 2016 master plans and had significant experience working throughout the Commonwealth. Another consultant served as an adjunct planning professor at UMass Amherst, as well as planning director in Amherst and Burlington, Vermont. The attorney consultant on this project had served as Assistant Attorney General for the Municipal Law Unit. Finally, an architect was consulted for design standards. The committee's website has a significant amount of information on it, links to informational videos, a side-by-side comparison of the existing versus the proposed bylaw are among just the various resources you could find there. It's the committee's hope that being completely transparent about the proposed changes and process, that residents would feel informed when voting on this important article. The supplemental handout has listed 22 significant changes to the bylaw. I'd like to highlight a few here. 1, increasing the ease of navigation of the bylaw. As an example, parking and landscape requirements are found in three different sections of the current bylaw. Reduce the number of overlay districts from 12 to 4. The current bylaw has 2 sets of rules for some properties, and it lends itself to confusion. There's a mandate in the proposed zoning bylaw that affordable housing be created in multifamily developments, and it scratches the fee in lieu of those affordable units. 4, limit multifamily developments to 7 units per acre, except in the town center and mixed-use business district. 5, update the sign section of the bylaw and ensure compliance with recent Supreme Court decisions. 6, implement town meeting's action of 2019 relative to non-retail recreational marijuana. 7, update the floodplain district to comply with recent guidelines from FEMA. 8, update the groundwater protection district to include language requested from the EPA relative to the closure of the Superfund site at Rocco's landfill. And finally, 9, add small wireless facilities outside of the right-of-way to address a 2018 FCC ruling and complement the Board of Selectmen's current regulations. Again, as a credentialed land use planner that has served the town of Tewksbury for nearly 20 years, I believe that the document contained in Article 34 is a significantly better document than the current zoning bylaw. As I have always done, I will do my best to answer any and all questions the town meeting members may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fowler and Mr. Sadwick. I just want to read some ground rules for this article. So this article pertains to the zoning bylaw. The article before town meeting tonight is the culmination of 5 years of work. The work has included the creation by the Board of Selectmen of a zoning bylaw committee comprised of representatives of several elected boards and citizen representatives who worked closely with town officials and zoning experts to create the final product that is before us tonight. The zoning bylaw is an extremely complex and interdepartment bylaw. Many of its sections are dictated by federal and state guidelines and statutes, as well as federal and state legal decisions and precedents. For these reasons, although town meeting members are free to offer amendments to this article, I encourage town member meetings to refrain from doing so. In the event that a town meeting member does put forward an amendment for consideration, I will evaluate each as falling into one of 2 categories after discussion and consultation with any of the following: Board of Selectmen, Planning Board, Town Manager, Assistant Town Manager, Town Council, and Town Planner. So the 2 categories are this: the proposed amendment and its intent and consequences can be clearly determined, and there do not appear to be any unknown or potentially unexpected consequences that will affect other sections of the bylaw or result in running afoul of federal, state guidelines or statutes and/or federal and state legal decisions or precedents. So that's one bucket of amendments. The other is the proposed amendment and its intent and consequences cannot be clearly determined, and/or it cannot be clearly determined whether there may be potential unexpected consequences that will affect other sections of the bylaw or result in running afoul of federal and state guidelines or statutes and/or federal and state legal decisions or precedents. It will be the moderator's intent that if the proposed permit, I'm going to start that again. It will be the moderator's intent that if the proposed amendment is deemed to fall into the first category, that it will be deemed proper and be allowed to be put forward and debated. It will be the moderator's intent that if the proposed amendment is deemed to fall into the second category, that the moderator will err on the side of determining that the proposed amendment is not proper and will not be allowed to be put forward and debated. Ultimately, if you support an amendment that is deemed to be improper, your remedy will be to vote against the bylaw. Since the article has been available to the public for months in its draft form, and a duly noted public hearing was conducted on April 12, 2021, I will ask any and all members that present an amendment, if it was previously be discussed with town officials or during the April 12th, 2021 public hearing. So I hope that was clear, but we will certainly pause and work through any issues that present themselves as we go through the article. Is there any discussion on Article 34? Just come straight up the middle to the microphone. Oh, that's fine. And if you can just give me your name and address for the record.
Jessica Randolph, 1484 Andover Street.
So just try and stay as close as you can to the microphone, otherwise we're going to have trouble hearing you. Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Very good. So, regarding a very small section on the map, which has become mixed-use business, I draw your attention to the area which colloquially was referred to for many years as the Triangle. It is up on 133 and Fisk Street. This area has been under discussion for a long time. Now, admittedly, in the time of the difficulty of COVID, we all did not go to possibly as many hearings. The April 12th one, I am sorry to say I did not attend. So therefore, in searching around for information, when I saw this map on my email, which frankly, on my email displayed so tiny, that it was almost impossible to see. But since I live in that neighborhood, of course, I was extremely curious to see what was being proposed. So I did find the YouTube video explaining all the various changes, an overview. And I heard on that, and I tried to count the seconds, it was something in the vicinity of 9 seconds, gesturing up that way saying, well, it's already that way anyway, so it's going to go as mixed-use business. And that's all the information I have had as a neighbor. Now, I would not bear the brunt of having more business because I don't live across from the street, but there are plenty of residents who do. So I would like to know more information about how that came to pass. I appreciate very much learning about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
First, that the map is to be taken up in Article 35, but I have no problem answering that question. The triangle, as we've all come to know it over the years, has a significant amount of development that has occurred. There's a overlay district that exists right now that has allowed for both commercial development. There's been at least 1, 2, 3, I think there's been 3 or 4 projects along Andover Street that have been commercial, that have been permitted there. And then they're right at the point of North and Andover Streets, there is a multifamily townhouse project that was approved recently. So in looking at, the thought wasn't so much to encourage additional development there, but it was more to reflect what's happened there. I believe there may be one parcel possibly that's still left to be developed.
Hi, good evening.
Hi, my name is Robert Wald. I live at 97 Cardigan Road. when I looked over the appendix to the new zoning law, that seemed to be one of the major places that changes were made. And in particular, I was looking at the office and research zone. There are about a dozen changes to what is allowed in that zone. And so my first question is, are any of those required by federal, state laws, guidelines, anything like that, or are they all available for, any of them not available for amendment? I could read them off if you want.
Sure, if you'd like to go ahead and read them off.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, do you have them that you wanted to read off?
I do.
Okay.
For what has been office and research zone for the whole time I've been in Tewksbury, which is 30 years, there are now in the proposal to allow multifamily developments, congregate residence, assisted living residence, continuing care retirement community, nursing home, rest home, or similar long-term residential congregate care, which may include accessory adult daycare and or respite care, food establishments, drive-through restaurants, child care center, hotel or motel with or without a conference center, cinema, theater for live performance, gyms, athletic clubs, adult use, animal hospitals, marijuana cultivation, marijuana research, marijuana manufacturing, and wireless communication facility.
Okay. The one use that I can point to specifically on there, childcare, is something that is an exempt use under the State Zoning Act. That's Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 3, which has exemptions, and childcare facilities is one of those that towns cannot prohibit nor require a special permit. So in this instance, the committee looked at that and included it in the new use table. Some of the other uses that you had pointed out, the congregate care, assisted living, nursing home, hotels currently are allowed. I don't think it gets into the discussion about the conference centers. Theater was supposed to be for live performances. Athletic center, the adult uses is something that has existed at least back to 1996 in the current zoning bylaw. And then the marijuana cultivation, research, and manufacturing. What happened was in 2019, town meeting allowed the ban on those three uses, and so the committee looked at it and said, it seems like that fits the type of uses that would be in both the office research district, because there is manufacturing allowed, and the heavy industrial district. The office research district really didn't come into being until about 10 years ago. Prior to that, it was all heavy industrial up there. And I think the largest development parcel that's available up there, I think most people know the history that there's been a number of attempts to build things there or permit things that just have not taken hold. Going back to at least 1998, where an office building was approved and then appealed, and by the time it came out of the appeal process, September 11th happened. That project didn't go forward because of the real estate market. And I think going forward, it's unknown today what commercial uses are going to occur in office parks. So there was an attempt to try and add some additional uses there that may help those properties come online for the tax base.
So is this the point in the process where I can offer amendments?
Sir, when you speak, just get the microphone a little closer to your mouth just so I can hear you. Sorry.
All right. Is this the point in the process to offer amendments?
Yes, you can offer an amendment at any time.
Thank you. I move that multifamily use not be allowed in the office research zone. The reason is that if office research zones get multifamily housing, then we permanently lose any tax benefit that offices may bring to the town in the future. Right now, yes, the housing market, the office market is terrible. But before the pandemic, there was a boom in office construction in Waltham and in Boston. Just as an example of the tax loss, there's another housing project, if there was another housing project like the Lodge on Ames Pond, it would probably bring in a similar number of students, which is 61 from the last count. In 2019, the town taxes paid for almost $17,000 per pupil on operating costs. So 60 more pupils would add over $1 million. That is more than the Lodge pays in taxes, total. And that will happen year after year. I personally am glad that families want to live here. My question is how we will pay for the education of the young people. In a few years, the economy will grow again. 3 years, 5 years, I don't know. Office buildings are taxed as commercial property, which is almost twice as high as residence. And the residents, judging by the Lodge experience around Ames Pond, are basically a wash when it comes to taxes to support the students. If residences are built on an office research site, the opportunity for an office building is gone for the foreseeable future, and with it, the chance of bringing in significant revenue for decades. Looking at other office buildings around Ames Pond in the 135,000, 155,000 square foot range, we're looking at over $250,000 to almost $500,000 in tax revenue. And
One minute left.
okay, that's fine. That's what I have to say.
Okay. So what I'd ask you to do, sir, can you come on up front and give us that amendment in writing? And I'm just going to quickly confer with town council and the assistant town manager. Okay, sir, you're all set. That amendment is here and ready to go, and we'll take that up prior to voting on the article.
Thank you.
So are you going to speak? Just let her clean off the microphone first. Good evening.
Good evening. Other mic, thank you. Good evening. My name is Bob O'Brien. I'm at 110 Cardigan Road. I've been a resident there for over 36 years. I really want to talk about the intent of this bylaw change and some futuristic views of it, rather than talk about the elements and attributes of each element within that. So, first thing I have an issue is a composition of the bylaw planning committee. A lot of the people in that committee kind of sort of butter their bread by either working in the building industry or supporting the business industry. I think that's a critical concern because their agenda is possibly much different than the agenda of the residents of the town. This amendment itself is massive. Voters maybe think they're voting for A, B, C, while they're actually voting for X, Y, Z as well. I think it was designed to be so massive to confuse the voting audience and make it a really difficult task to get your hands around it. This amendment will bring much needed short-term revenue shortfall because of poor, and I want to repeat, because of poor past planning approvals. Longer term, you can add this amendment to the poor planning wastebasket that is growing every day and every year within Tewksbury. Look at the development on Route 38. All part of this development. It looks like a going out of sale picture for buildings, apartments that have never been occupied. Why do you want to add more to that? If you want Route 133 to look like Route 1 in Saugus and Peabody in a few years, then vote for the bill. Restaurants, bars, apartments, short-term housing, cinemas, adult clubs, marijuana farms, marijuana factories. You read the local papers, you can buy drugs all along 133 quite regularly, and there's no permits or approvals there. If you want Tewksbury to remain a community, to raise a family, to live comfortably, to enjoy the ambience and have a good quality of life, vote no. Again, I want to reiterate, this amendment is to bring short-term revenue to cover prior poor planning decisions, and as Bob referred to, let's wait a bit. Commercial property brings in a much higher revenue stream per acreage. It's 5 days a week, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., where if you make this a retail, an environment like that, it's going to be 7 by 24 activity. So if you think Route 133 is heavy with traffic now, this is only the beginning of it. And as 133 gets backed up with traffic, you got to have all the accessory roads. Fisk, River Road, Bellevue and Andover, Kendall Road, North Street, Livingston Street, all the accessory roads around there. People are going to be driving on those roads to bypass the congestion at 133, i.e. at the beginning to Ames Pond. And this will also extend with this permit not only within that belt, but it can go from the Tewksbury line all the way down to where Brooks is, or no, it's not Brooks anymore, but down by where River Road meets 133 in Lowell. So it's a vast amount of property. So if you want Route 1, Peabody, Saugus, move to the North Shore. If you want quiet and comfort, stay in Tewksbury. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, come on up.
Thank you. I'll keep my remarks short since I've already spoken. Jessica Randolph at 1484 Andover Street. I wanted to thank my neighbors. This is an issue of quality of life in Tewksbury, in our area of North Tewksbury. I have taken to walking, as many of us have during the time of COVID, in adjacent neighborhoods that are an eighth of a mile, and I appreciate coming sidewalks. I don't know how my neighbors feel about that. I walk down in neighborhoods and I'm shocked to see that those houses go for over $800,000. Would they want to know that going down their street, they're going to then see, when they try to get onto 133, which is already challenged, right across the street, all kinds of signs, lights on. Is that what we're looking for to develop the future of Tewksbury? I also want to point out that in previous times when the triangle was considered for various proposals, one of them had such a high dense multifamily that the fire department said no, not acceptable. It was basically a one-way road in, no way for them to turn around. I am not opposed to having a variety of housing here. I would appreciate in the future greater communication with the neighborhood when articles are written up that affect our lives. I know that there was input about the town center, but I feel there was very little opportunity to foster positive relations with my neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ruth Chu, 338 North Billerica Road.
Hello, Ruth.
I make a motion to indefinitely postpone this article.
Thank you. As a motion for indefinite postponement, we can continue the discussion on the article.
I'd like to.
Alexandra Louder, 1001 Whipple Road. I'm here tonight to speak in strong favor of the adoption of Article 34 of the warrant, which proposes to revise the entirety of the zoning bylaw to make it easier for residents to navigate, simplify and update the language, and provide better structure for predictability and flexibility in both the interests of the current use and future adaptability. This revision of the zoning bylaw is the culmination of over 5 years of work, some of which I was able to witness firsthand while working in the Community Development Office at Town Hall. However, I'm not speaking to you all tonight as a town employee, but instead as a resident of Massachusetts, as a member of this community, and as a homeowner in Tewksbury. The Tewksbury Master Plan was accepted by the Planning Board on June 20th, 2016. In order to put these carefully curated plans into action, the Board has selected and established the Zoning Bylaw Committee to review how the town can reconcile its current bylaws with what it envisioned for the future. The first meeting of the Chucksburg Zoning Bylaw Committee was held on June 23, 2016. Since that first meeting, there have been over 44 public meetings and 9 presentations wherein various changes were proposed, discussed at length, or scrapped at the behest of residents. This has been an entirely collaborative effort between residents, elected officials, and town staff. Nothing was included at a single person's whim. There have been 10 drafts of revisions to the zoning bylaw, all as a result of resident feedback and discussions among various town boards. Draft 9 was presented for public comment at presentations held on January 14th, 15th, and 23rd, 2020. It originally included R10 and R20 zoning districts, or some called it small lot zoning. The purpose of these districts would have been to reflect pre-existing higher density neighborhoods so that those residents, through no fault of their own, who own homes on pre-existing non-conforming lots would be afforded the same rights to their property as those with 1-acre lots. There was a lot of concern from residents of what the implications would be overall for land development if these new zoning districts were included. Residents wanted more research, oversight, and information before this was proposed as a formal revision. As a result, the issue was tabled until further research could be conducted. It is not included in the version we are here to discuss tonight. What are included are, however, our desperately needed organizational changes. Reorganization is incredibly important to make the zoning bylaw user-friendly. It concerns people's right to enjoy their property and therefore should not require a lawyer to interpret it. In the existing zoning bylaw, the bylaws residents and small businesses most frequently need are not thoughtfully organized. This disorganization is the result of piecemeal changes over time where additions did not take into consideration existing sections. An example of this is the bylaws that govern signage. The regulations for signs in town were spread over 3 separate sections of the bylaw. In this proposed revision, all guidelines are in one subsection. Each section has consistent numbering conventions, definitions are clearer. This is true for the entire document. A big concern I have heard at town events, in phone calls to town hall, and even on resident Facebook pages, is that this revision of the zoning bylaw allows unmitigated development of overly dense neighborhoods, but is in fact quite the opposite. This revision adds restrictions to multifamily developments where they do not currently exist.
One minute.
Yes, sir. Under the current zoning bylaw, multifamily developments are able to add as many as 18 condo units per 1.6 acres. This proposed revision to the bylaw would limit it to 7 units or 14 bedrooms per acre. This allows for deliberate, calculated development that the town truly needs. Like it or not, the development of exclusively large single-family homes on 1-acre lots is not the future for this region, and it cannot be the future for Tewksbury. We want to continue to be enticing to new businesses and families and to make it enjoyable for people who already live here. We're in the process of building a state-of-the-art elementary school, which will certainly be a draw for future generations. The responsible move here is to regulate what kinds of development come to town and make it sure it is beneficial for as many people as possible. The proposed revisions for the zoning bylaw detailed in Article 34 are not a blank check to developers. They are not asking residents to compromise on their desires for living in this town, and most importantly, they are not telling you that your ideas and concerns do not matter. The very existence of the Tewksbury Master Plan, Zoning Bylaw Committee, and the 10th revision of the zoning bylaw prove that your opinions do matter, and our zoning must reflect the current and future needs of the town. Thank you.
Thank you.
When you gave your initial instructions, I couldn't hear very well. So the question I have now is, are there going to be votes on amendments and room for other changes before the final vote, or are all the amendments going to be submitted ahead of time and then before the first one is voted?
So we'll vote on the indefinite postponement first, and then the amendments.
So the first thing we'll vote on will be the indefinite postponement. The next votes will be on any amendments that we have in front of us. And then, depending on if the amendments pass or don't pass, we'll vote on an article that's either been altered or not altered.
So what I'm hearing is that there will not be an opportunity after all the amendments are submitted to add others. It'll go through the amendments and to the final vote after the indefinite postponement.
It would depend on, obviously, the outcome of the indefinite postponement. Then we'll take up the amendments in the order that presented.
Okay.
And then we would take up, if someone has moved the question on the article.
Well, I have several other proposed amendments, and I guess this is the point to add them into the process. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So yeah. And I just need to let all the residents have an opportunity to speak before I really get you back up there again. So you can present what you have right now.
Okay. My concern is that our town has some hilly parts, as you can see around Ames Pond in particular, and so that if buildings are put up, they will they would tower over the adjacent housing. And I believe that the intent of having a size limit on buildings is to keep them from doing that. There is a size limit, for example, on multifamily housing of 45 feet. So what I would like to propose to try to handle, to work around the situation where a building is put on a high area, is this proposal. I move that if the ground plan of a building is at any point higher than the ground, not the ground plan, the ground plane of a building, at any point is higher than the ground plane of any abutting house, then the height of the building shall be measured from the lowest ground plane of an abutting house at the point closest to the building. So,
And that's an amendment. Do you have that in writing?
I do.
Can you bring that up so we can discuss? So that amendment is considered out of order because it is more restrictive than the current bylaw that is in place. So this is not an acceptable amendment.
Okay.
So I would ask you to, if you could do me a favor, just set aside, let some other residents speak since you've reached your 5 minutes, and then we can have you come back up.
Hello, my name is Larry Zook at 177 Catamount Road.
Hey Larry, thanks for coming. If you want, you can just pull that microphone up closer to you, and you don't have to bend down to it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so I'm a little bit confused about the definition of office research zoning, specifically about the Ames Pond area. I live near that, and I can't find the things that are allowed in an office research zoning in this packet. I can't find where it says you're allowed multi-family things in that office research part, specifically in regards to the proposed amendment. So, is that what am I missing? I'm at the web page. It doesn't. I can't seem to find where is that?
So you're looking for where you can find within the office research,
Yes.
the multifamilies?
Yes, you have that, please.
Okay.
And that name, office research, is not a very good name if you're going to allow everything else. It's sort of a catch-all phrase. Okay. So I would like that to be a little bit clearer so we know what we're voting for. And I appreciate all the work you've done to fix the problems. I apologize, I haven't been actively involved. I didn't know this work was going on for a long time like last year and everything. But I am concerned about getting extra traffic on Route 133 and that sort of thing. But so if we, you know, so basically we should understand what's included in each definition here of the zoning districts.
So, just so you know, we have somebody that's bringing you a copy of the warrant
Okay.
that was out on the
That's-
tables, that had the use tables in there, so you can look
Yep.
at that a little bit more closely.
Okay, you could just bring it to me.
Here she comes. And I wanted to pick up on some previous comments that were made, that right now the zoning on Andover Street does not change from North Street to River Road to the mobile station. That remains R40, so there's no change along that strip at all. That would take a different town meeting vote. It's not part of
Okay,
this.
so that's between North Street and River Road?
Towards River Road.
What about
down
the other way from North Street towards Andover?
Towards Andover. So, like I said, this is where things get very confusing,
Yeah.
is that some of those parcels on North Street are currently R40, but because there's an existing overlay district that the current bylaw has, that allowed for multifamily development, it allowed for the child care center that went in there, it allowed for the bank expansion and the coffee shop, and there was also a restaurant that was permitted on 133. So today's bylaw already allows for those types of uses.
Okay. All right, well, thank you for this. Here, I'll look at it.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm going to ask first if we can have some residents that haven't had an opportunity to speak, so we can just step to the side for a minute, sir.
I'll be very brief. Can I just be very brief?
No, I'd rather just keep it in the right order. I'll get myself in trouble with someone else. Go ahead, sir.
My name is Bob McKenna, 29 Oregon Road in Tewksbury. I have a question. On the new bylaws, am I correct in reading that multifamily dwellings or apartment buildings will be able to be 5 stories high as opposed to the previous 4 stories?
I want to give you the best answer possible, so I'm going to look a little bit more closely. I believe that that would only be in certain districts, namely the. I want to get to it before I. That would only be in the town center district.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear your answer,
Yeah,
sir.
that's only in the town center district.
All right, so my question is, if we're going to have buildings that reach 5 floors, is there anyone up here that can tell me, does our fire department have equipment that can rescue someone from the 5th floor? Because if they don't, how can we in good conscience build buildings that are a fire hazard? In reality, if our fire equipment isn't able to reach them.
Do we have a ladder?
We do have ladder trucks that will reach the 5th story.
I'm sorry, our current fire equipment will reach a 5th story?
Our current fire equipment should be able to reach that height. We have a brand new ladder that we bought within the last couple of years, and we shouldn't have any issues.
Okay, are you 100% sure of that answer, sir? Because it's a life and death question in reality, so
I'm not going to say I'm 100% sure, but
okay. So I'd just like to point out, if we are not 100% sure that our fire equipment can keep residents on a 5th floor safe, which in reality, these 5th floors are really 6 floors when there's an underground garage under them, I don't think we should be moving forward with something if we're not 100% sure it can be safe for our residents. I'd just like everyone to think about that. Would you want your parents or grandparents being on a top floor unit unless you're absolutely 100% sure our fire equipment can reach them safely?
So,
Thank you.
right, and I hear what you're saying. The fire department has significant input when it comes to any type of permitting, and if they had the equipment that couldn't meet it, they would not approve it through the permitting process. It would be that simple.
Is there a representative of the fire department here that can confirm that?
Nope, not that I'm aware of.
All right,
Not at the moment, but we're reaching out to the chief and we'll get an answer.
thank you.
As a matter of fact, Richard, I was able to get an answer already. We do have a ladder truck that can reach the 5th floor, and that is a definitive 100%.
yep, we're 100% sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Just a quick question. The acoustics in here aren't that great. It's hard to hear what you're saying. Everything's coming out muffled. You mentioned 5 or so minutes ago an amendment was pulled. Did you say an amendment that was presented tonight was pulled?
There was an amendment presented that was, yes, it was ruled out of order. Is what it was.
And what amendment was that?
If the ground plan of a building at any point is higher than the ground plane of any abutting house at the point closest to both, then the height of the building shall be measured from the lowest ground plane on an abutting house at the point closest to the building.
Why is that amendment out of order?
Because it is more restrictive than the current bylaws that exist. Is that?
Now, you addressed that with a few people there. This is a town meeting. Why wasn't to pull that amendment presented to the folks at town meeting rather than have it, let me finish please, rather than have a handful of people who most likely developed the new bylaws also voted on that amendment? I think it's restricting town vote, town meeting vote.
Yeah.
And
So I stated up front, I was very clear up front. I did my best to read through it slowly so everyone understood the ground rules, that as the moderator of the meeting, I'm responsible to hear the amendment, and that if I needed to, I would discuss with town council, with assistant town manager, planner, whoever was the appropriate people to make those decisions, because I'm not the expert on all the zoning laws. So I ran through that, and I let everyone know up front that that's what we would be doing.
Okay.
And that is exactly what we did. So I told you up front there would be 2 types of amendments, one that's were accepted and ones that we had to rule out of order.
okay, one other question. Thank you for your response. How does one go about appealing that amendment denial? How does one go about doing that?
Well, tonight, there's no way to appeal that. Yeah, Kevin, you wanna? I'll have town council come up and explain it to you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. My name is Kevin Feely, the Town Council, and you're asking good and fair questions. This is certainly a complicated issue. To answer your last question, there is no appeal of a decision made by a moderator at a town meeting. When he determines that a
He didn't determine it. He approached the committee. He even said he doesn't have the experience and background to answer that question, so he went to his gang of 4 or 5 who potentially wrote the bylaws to begin with. It's taken that question out of the residents' hands and put it in a private community.
With all due respect, sir, I promise I would never interrupt you. Let me just finish the answer, and then I may be answering exactly what you're talking about now.
Thank you.
So the reason that it would be considered, in my opinion, that it would be considered to be out of order is this. When a warrant is adopted by the Board of Selectmen, it includes items that tell everyone in the town, this is what's going to be discussed at town meeting. When an amendment like this is ruled out of order, it's because it is doing something that is outside of the scope of the warrant. It's in excess of what's in the warrant. So the fear that any moderator has is that there could be people who did not come tonight who, if they knew that was a potential issue to be discussed, may be here. That's why they use the phrase that a warrant is warning the town of what's going to be discussed. So as the moderator said, when something is more restrictive than what is in the warrant, that's why it is ruled out of order. It doesn't mean it can never be brought up at a future town meeting. It just means that for the purpose of tonight, it's ruled out of order.
Well, when you talk about the height in the new bylaws, the height of the building relative to what? It doesn't specify the height relative to what?
You just answered the question, sir. Since the amendment says we're going to measure it based on an abutting or an adjacent lot, that would be outside of the scope of the bylaw that is being discussed tonight.
Second part of my question, how does one go about appealing that then?
In a town meeting, the moderator's ruling is final for the purpose of what happens tonight.
Thank you, but I think the town is being denied an opportunity to review that amendment.
Understood.
Sorry. What is the current limit on a multifamily building in the current zoning bylaw?
What is the limit of the multi-family,
The height of a multifamily building.
for a multi-family building? Mr. Sadler's looking up the answer.
It's going to take me a minute because in the current bylaw, it's in multiple different places, so I'm going to have to go through it to find it before I can give you an answer.
I could go on to another amendment, or shall we wait?
Are you reading the amendment?
No, I'm asking if we should wait for Mr. Sedgwick, or should I go on and read another proposed amendment? That's a question for you.
You're going to have to state it again.
Should we wait for Mr. Sedgwick to get the information, or can I go on to another?
No, you can just, yeah, continue on, please.
Okay. In section 6.3A, there's a change in the distance that billboards can be from residences. It's a change from 1,000 feet to 500 feet. I move that it be kept at 1,000 feet from a residence zone.
Okay, can you bring that amendment up, please, sir? So the amendment, we'll call it amendment number 2, is billboards shall be at least 1,000 feet from a residential zone. And that is considered in order, so this is the second amendment that we will vote on this evening. Good evening.
Hi, good evening. Sarah Steele, 10 Pocahontas Road.
Welcome, Sarah.
What is our plan for moving forward if this passes for 133's added traffic for our most vulnerable children, our SPED department, K through 2, and our DLC preschool, if they are all being sent to the doing now? Will added safety measures be put forth in the school buildings?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Whether this new zoning bylaw passes or whether it doesn't, we will make sure that all precautions are put in place and safety measures are put in place for children going to school in the area of the doing as well as other areas of town. That would have nothing to do with whether this bylaw passes.
If all of our special ed kids in preschool and K through 2 are being sent to the doing now, there's going to be added traffic. All of these kids mostly take vans. Now they're going to be on the van for what? 20, 25 minutes, 30 minutes? Half of these kids come from across town.
Sarah, I appreciate the question, and I think it's a good question that needs to be brought up and discussed. Unfortunately, it's out of the scope of this article. So I think the answer covers what we need to cover for the answer, but in terms of the zoning article itself, which is what we're discussing, that's what we need to stay focused on.
Okay, so if it passes, there will be a discussion on how to keep our kids safe from the added traffic.
Yes.
Okay.
Dustin Weir, 426 Chandler. I rise in support of the overall changes to these bylaws. I think the fact that Mr. Sedgwick is still trying to look up a simple answer to the height of a multifamily building is a perfect example of exactly why we need this grand overhaul. As a resident, I do appreciate the particulars of the issues that people have brought up tonight. The last amendment was an excellent one. It's a very succinct change, targeting something very specific. And I appreciate those modifications here tonight. It's unfortunate that I've heard a lot of people say that they didn't know about the committee that's been in existence for 5 years. And just let me get close so I can hear. As a member of the General Bylaw Committee, which is active right now, I should hope that everybody be aware that that is going on and we don't end up with this kind of situation. That everybody knows that we're working on the general bylaws currently and that they get involved in those early stages so we don't have to have the last minute changes and last minute debates as well. So, thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Mr. Sappett?
Okay, I have an answer on the height. So, in the dimensional table in the back of the current zoning bylaw, it's 45 feet. If you go look through the overlay districts, of which there's 5 of those in the zoning bylaw, that's what was taking me the time. It's 35 feet in the community village overlay district, but the planning board can waive the height of a project if, in its opinion, it makes for a better project. The same is with the South Village overlay district, the Village Mixed Use overlay district. In the Village Residential overlay district, it's held to 35 feet. And then in the Town Center overlay district, it's 35 feet or up to 45 feet or 3 stories based on the planning board's opinion on how it would affect the project. That's in the current bylaw.
Okay. Well, then I'm going to move that multifamily building heights be limited to 35 feet when they abut a residence.
Do you have that from right this way?
You don't have a reference from the bylaw?
Not on that one. Can you get a reference? Sure. Because it's in multiple places.
Well, it can take me a minute to find it. Could be, yeah.
Ask you a question, sir? On this one you used here, on the billboards, just because it's a little bit different how you wrote it, you just want that number to be $1.
We're going to need to take a brief recess for a minute as we look up the information.
I'm almost done.
I'm going to try and call this meeting back to order. All right. So the existing amendment that was presented to us is considered out of order. The current section 8.2.4D, maximum building height shall be 45 feet unless waived by the planning board. The amendment's proposal to make the maximum building height 35 feet is more restrictive. So while it is a fair concern, it would be something if the bylaw were passed an article could be submitted at town meeting to make that change. But it is not, it's outside the scope of the zoning bylaw this evening. So I'm going to give this to the town clerk. I'm also going to take up the motion for indefinite postponement. This motion was made a while ago, and I did allow some discussion because I wanted people to have an opportunity to discuss the article. So with the motion for indefinite postponement up, is there any discussion on indefinite postponement?
Dustin Weir, 426 Chandler Street. I think the motion for indefinite postponement in particular is kind of a crude procedural hurdle that gets put in our way on occasion. I think it was last year we had to jump about 9 or 10 of those, and we were here till 9 or 10 o'clock. You can have your opinion on the articles themselves and the submissions themselves, and we're in an open town format. Typically, that procedural element in the rules is there for people to allow smaller committee members to vote on an article without having to vote on the article. So you can say, I vote, we can defeat the article without saying that I'm against, traffic flow in front of the schools. Then you can vote on something else that technically isn't that other fit. I think in this format, it just doesn't make any sense. And for all of us who are going through the effort to come out here tonight, it's unnecessary because the votes are held in this open forum. None of us have a risk of being voted out of the town of Tewksbury. So the real purpose of that procedure is kind of null and void for what we're doing here. And I think it's just another hurdle that just kind of wastes more time to try and get to the ultimate point. Because we disagree something, let it come to a vote now, and see what happens. I mean, that's what we're all here to do, is vote on the amendments and not to spend a whole bunch of time putting obstacles in the way of these proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dennis Francis, 45 Seneca Road. I disagree with the last person. I believe once a motion is made for indefinite postponement, and then there's a lot of time was allotted for people to speak, I think it's the right time, what you did, Mr. Moderator, in terms of doing the vote for indefinite postponement. And if the motion goes down, then we can discuss more. But I believe tonight, right now, is the appropriate time for that to be voted on. Thank you.
Ruth Chu, 338 North Billerica Road. Mr. Moderator, for the benefit of the residents who are voting this evening, would you please define for them what it means to indefinitely postpone?
Yes, I intend to do that right before they vote, so that it's fresh in their minds.
I would appreciate if you do it now so that the residents know what to compare with what the previous two speakers have mentioned, so that they have no confusion as to why this motion has been made. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other speakers? All right, seeing none. Indefinite postponement is a motion to defeat the article. If you wish to defeat the article, vote yes. If you wish to vote on the adoption of the article, vote no. So I want to make sure that's clear. If you wish to defeat the article, vote yes. And if you wish to vote on the adoption of the article, vote no. So I'm going to have the counters count here. So all those in favor of indefinite postponement, please signify by rising. I need everyone else seated. All right. All those opposed to indefinite postponement, please rise. Indefinite postponement fails. 54 votes yes, 72 votes no. There's an amendment in front of us, amendment number 1. Amendment number 1. I can't hear a thing you're saying, sir.
Is there an opportunity to add other amendments?
Yes, we're going to take the 2 amendments that are sitting in front of us first.
Okay?
So amendment number 1 is a vote to move that multifamily not be allowed as a use in an office or research zone. Is there any discussion on amendment number 1?
Yes, Mr. Moderator, Dottie Gale, 12 Ellington Road. Does that amendment have the article number that I can look up, please? Within the bylaw, I mean.
You're looking for the article number within the zoning bylaw.
Exactly.
Thank you. I understand what you need. I understand what you need, but I don't have it at this moment. Give me 1 minute.
Shouldn't that be part of the amendment?
Go ahead, Steve. I'll write it down as you go.
Without looking at the amendment itself, on page 116 of the warrant, I'm sorry, 117.
I'm sorry, 11601? Is that correct?
No.
117.
117.
Page 117.
Okay.
And it would be about 5 lines down. It's residential principal, item D, multifamily dwelling up to 7 units, section 8.2. And right now in the warrant it says PB under the office research district. And the amendment was to change the PB to a no.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on this amendment?
Hello, Larry Zook, 177 Catamount Road. So the amendment 1 does not also include multifamily development, which is F on the table. Is it just was that the intent of the amendment to include both types of multifamily?
Not specific. Should we ask the petitioner to be more specific? He's sitting right there. You want to have him come up? You want to go over? He's sitting right next to the podium. Mr. Wood?
Where is, oh. So the proponent of that amendment has just confirmed that it relates to item D, which is the multifamily dwelling up to 7 units. That would be from PB to no. And then item F, which is multifamily development, which again in the Office Research District is PB in the warrant, and the amendment was meant to include that as a no.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And did I hear correctly that there's still a chance to have proposed? Oh, did you say there's a chance to propose another amendment after we vote on these amendments? Or
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, and name and address for the record.
Steve Johnson, 21st Street. I rise against the amendment, and I just want to make sure everybody understands, because I think, as was discussed before, any of the amendments made tonight are going to be very difficult to judge here. This is why they really should have been brought forth at some point during the 4 years that this was discussed, the hearings that were held prior to town meeting, because people are going to get caught up in the potential of unintended consequences, and not the kind that are going to get the amendment thrown out. But what I mean is, in this example, you're going to remove the multifamily option, which can only be done with approval. It's not a by right, it would require approval, at which point it can be discussed and designs could be changed to make sure that the project looks a certain way. Those kind of things can be done. By removing that, you may unintentionally cause something where, for an example, you end up with a 40B project. Well, because it's the only option left, potentially. Now, without passing judgment on a 40B project, understand that that removes basically any input from the town. You get what the developer can do, and zoning is pretty much tossed out the window. So what you think you might be stopping, you might be causing something much, much, much less of what you would be hoping would go there, or what you thought you were preventing by removing this option. So just try to keep in mind that when these things are put forward, you know, as part of a 5-year development, they're not just done off the cuff. There's a reason why those things are there. And by removing them, you're limiting options, you're limiting the ability of the town and the boards that deal with certain things to have any input, because, like I said, in this case, should a developer have been interested in doing multifamily, if that is removed as any possible option, the only option that might remain to them is a 40B project. I know many of the people in here, when one was proposed on 38, kind of lost their minds and may have then realized at that point that the town has almost no control whatsoever at that point. And in the event the town tries to fight it, you're actually fighting the state, because the state defends the developer. So you're pretty much just throwing money out the window if you try to fight it, because you're going to lose eventually. So please keep that in mind when you look at these amendments, that you're not just doing what's being asked tonight. You might actually be doing a lot more than that. And that's one of the reasons why it took so long for these things to be put forward in the zoning bylaw. They were discussed, 44 meetings. How anybody could get up here tonight and act like they didn't have an opportunity to have their voice heard other than tonight is completely insane. There were hearings, there were meetings, there were vision sessions, there were presentations. Like, you can't say you didn't have an opportunity. You might not have wanted to take advantage of it, that's fine. But please try not to say that you didn't have an opportunity. These amendments could have been brought forward at the hearing process. They could have been vetted then and discussed and potentially, given recommendations of approval or not approval. Instead of trying to put them before town meeting tonight and asking everyone here to try to figure out something, as someone pointed out, an expert like Mr. Sadwick had to look through the book for I don't know how long to try and find something. An expert had to do that. This is incredibly difficult, and trying to change it on the fly in here is a mistake in almost every instance. And I would like town meeting to please keep that in mind and don't be drawn into people's personal vendettas or people's personal feelings in certain areas just because that's what they feel and aren't actually looking out for the best interests of the town, which I truly believe the bylaw subcommittee did when they put this together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Daniel Ronan, 1001 Whipple Road.
Just pull that microphone right up to your mouth, so the closer you are, the easier it is to hear you.
Dan Ronan, 1001 Whipple Road. Could you or somebody explain a little bit more about what 40B is? My understanding is that if the town has under a certain amount of affordable housing, 40Bs are allowed, and that's where the state can come in and pretty much do whatever they want, or a developer can do that. Over a certain percentage, we have much more control about what type of housing comes in. Could I just get some more clarification on that?
Hold on one second. I don't know who's the best person.
As I stated earlier this evening, Mass General Law, Chapter 40A is the Zoning Act. And there's certain things we can do as a town under the State Zoning Act. Mass General Law, Chapter 40B has been referred to as anti-snob zoning, but basically what it is that if a town does not have 10% of its year-round housing affordable, then you're subject to a 40B. And what happens under a 40B is that a developer can request waiving all local regulations and bylaws. They still have to comply with state health codes, State Wetland Protection Act, but our local wetland protection bylaw could be waived, the zoning bylaw could be waived, heights on buildings can be waived, densities can be waived. Currently, we just hit 10% affordable, so that's the good news. That happened this January. The bad news is that that number is recalculated after every federal census. So once the new census numbers come out for Massachusetts and each individual community, we will fall below 10% and we will be subject to a 40B project.
Good evening, Joyette Cameron, 111 Cardigan Road. So I just wanted to, I don't know if I can address the gentleman or I have to address you as the moderator, but what I want to clarify, because we've met with Mr. Sandwick, is that regardless of what the change is in the bylaw, whether it occurs or not, 40B can occur in the parcel in question, or what we know as the office and research, sorry, this is not working? Oh, sorry, yes, sorry. District, right? So it is not an unintended consequence. It can happen today, it can happen if we pass it can happen if we don't, right? So I think, you know, what we want to do is be heard. I haven't been here for 4 years. I've only lived in the town for 1 year, and this is fairly new to me. But I want to be heard, and if I don't want multifamily developments there, that should be my right. That is what the vote is for. That is it.
So, you are correct in your question statement. I just want to be clear that Mr. Johnson, when he spoke, mentioned 40B. That's not what we're talking about right now. What we're talking about is amendment number 1.
Point of order, Mr. Moderator. Are we in the process of voting on Article 34?
Yes, well, we're in the process of voting on amendment number 1 to Article 34. So we need to get back to that. I apologize. All right, seeing no one else rise, we're going to take a vote on the amendment that multifamilies not be allowed not being allowed use in an office research zone, A2D and A2F. All those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying no. No. I'm going to ask the counters to come up and count. My ears aren't that good. Tried to save you guys some steps, but... So all those in favor of passing amendment number 1, please signify by rising. All those opposed to the amendment number 1, please signify by rising. Amendment 1 passes 71 to 59, 71 yeses, 59 noes. Amendment number 2 is from section 6.3.a, and it's that billboards shall be at least 1,000 feet from a residential zone. Is there any discussion on amendment number 2?
Just so we can all be clear on the modifications, can I get the section number and the exact wording and how it's sort of structured within the draft?
Section 6.3.a. 6.3.a. What page? Page 87. Those watching at home.
Good evening. My name is Mike Canaris, 604 Clark Road. To me, it seems like this is a trade-off in terms of the locating billboards. I would like it, maybe if somebody could sort of give us the overview. I'll make an attempt myself if that's okay. It seems to be that we've got some billboards already at our doorstep. There's one in Lowell, near 38. I happen to live in that vicinity, and I hardly ever notice it, to be honest. I notice that there's probably 30 more of them further up on 495. I think it's kind of a sign of the times that technology would make its way to our highways. But there's good reason behind it, I think. My understanding is that $50,000 per billboard will go to the town each year, and that these permits that might be granted are, I guess 15 years might not be an exaggeration, which is a significant amount of money. I also understand that the town has decided to allocate that $50,000 per year towards building sidewalks and other infrastructure improvements, which I think are very, very much needed. Personally, I would much rather have a sidewalk than to be so concerned about a billboard on the highway, which I'm going to spend all of 3 seconds driving by. I also understand that these billboards have built-in features that prevent too much light coming from them. They darken at night. They can't shine any brighter than the day. In fact, they're supposed to be shining less bright than that particular sunlight on a particular day. So if there's anybody from the town who wants to talk a little bit more about any of the pros and cons of this issue, I'd be one person who'd be glad to hear it. Thank you.
Are there any other discussions on whether Amendment 2 should pass, moving billboards to setting the setback on billboards to 1,000 feet from a residential zone?
Good evening, Mr. Moderator. Jane Wellman, Shawshene Street. I rise in opposition to this amendment. Town meeting previously approved billboards in this community, and an amendment made on town meeting floor for 1,000 feet effectively made it impossible for us to put billboards in our community. If we adopt this amendment this evening, it will effectively end the ability for us to have billboards here in town. So I encourage the body to vote against the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to clarify on the amendment. The amendment states billboards should be at least 1,000 feet from a residential zone, which is different language than is in our actual bylaw. It should state that billboards should be at least 1,000 feet of a residential use. So that is what it states in the bylaw. That's what the amendment can state. Are you still okay with that amendment?
Yeah.
Okay. I will restate it before we actually vote. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. Just a quick question, Jessica Randolph at 1484 Andover Street. How long do these billboards shine? Are they 24 hours, 12? What's the time frame here? Thank you.
It is 24 hours, and there are dimming controls for nighttime and for other types of weather conditions. So those things are all built into the electronic billboards.
All right, so I want to make sure I restate the amendment for the voters before they vote. 6.3.a. Billboards should be at least 1,000 feet from a residence use. And I'm going to say residential use. Residential use. Language. Are you rising to speak on the amendment? I am. Okay. Keep it within the scope.
Thank you. Yes, Mark Kratman, 8 Sunset Road. I speak in opposition to this amendment. There's a lot of guidelines that go along with these billboards. They cannot be built by cemeteries. They cannot be built by ball fields. They can't be built by exit ramps. There's a lot of different things that go on to these things. If there's going to be a couple of billboards that will be built in this community, they're going to be on 495 and 93. And there may be an area where there's like a piece of land that may be zone residential that comes like across a set of railroad tracks or something like that, where there isn't going to be any homes, there isn't going to be anything that's built there. It just happens to be zoned along that area. And you're restricting yourself from getting revenue. And like I said, the areas where they're looking for is like 93, maybe off of Dascom, 133 up by Longhorns, where that's where these billboards are going to be located. They're not going to be built off of 38. They're not going to be built next to your houses. They're not going on Livingston Street. They're going on Interstate Highway. And each year, there could be a possibility of us getting, money to use the infrastructure. The residents asked us to find different ways to be innovative to get roadway repairs. And this is a way that's not coming out of your tax pockets. It's, a couple of $1 million is a lot of money that can be used for infrastructure that is well needed in this community. We're always complaining about our taxes going up. And for somebody to put a billboard off an interstate highway and they give us revenue to do so, I think it's an easy sell for us to take it and just do it. I don't think it's going to be affecting anybody's home. And, each time that one is going to be built, there will be a public hearing on it. And so as they come up, you'll be able to speak to each one that gets voted on. So if you don't like that specific billboard, you can vote that down. You can come up and say, I oppose certain sections of it. But at least have a public hearing. Don't restrict us from not being able to build them at all, because that's revenue coming out of your pockets. Thank you.
Thank you. So on amendment number 2, I'm going to ask the counters to come on up. All those in favor of passing amendment 2, which is billboards shall be at least 1,000 feet from a residential use, please signify by rising. All those looking to defeat amendment number 2, please signify by rising. Amendment number 2 is defeated, 19 yes, 96 no. So amendment 1 has been added to the article. People forgot what article we're on. We're on Article 34. It's quite some time ago. Is there any further discussion on Article 34? Yes.
Mr. Moderator, Vincent Fratalia, 81 Windsor Drive. You know, when this was first presented at town meeting, we allocated $100,000 to do this bylaw subcommittee with consultants that worked for years. The town staff that was involved here, the volunteers that were doing the work on this bylaw committee, spent hours and hours of time to get this to where we are today. If we throw this out, we are not doing good for the town of Tewksbury. We are moving backwards rather than going forward. You know, this article that's presented tonight, it may not be perfect, but I think it's better than what we have right now. I think it's a step in the right direction rather than staying where we are. Our bylaws now are flawed. There's no question about it. You talk to any developers that come in, and we see them all the time, that they have a hard time resolving their issues with all of the different amendments that have come through over the years. So, with that being said, I don't want to throw $100,000 out the window and go backwards. We should be going forward with this. MFD is out of the question now. A lot of the changes here are state regulations that we have to do. We need to pass this article tonight for the better of Tewksbury, for the residents of Tewksbury that are allocated $100,000. To me, that's a lot of money. It may not be a lot of money as far as and when we spend $122 million last night, but we have to do the right thing for the Tewksbury residents. There's only a small number of residents here tonight, and that's always the case. But let's just vote this thing in, move forward, and we can always change it down the road if we have to do some tweaking here and there. This is just time to move on, move the question, and do the right thing for the residents of Tewksbury. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I thought we were going to have time to add other amendments. Is that correct? I have one.
Moderator, point of order.
Yes.
We have a article before us tonight, and it's just being ripped apart by all these amendments that should have been taken up at the public hearings. I think this is wrong. We shouldn't allow it to be happening. Just nitpick this thing to death. And I move that we move the question and let's get it over with.
All right. Thank you. So there's a motion on the floor to move the question. So I'm going to take a vote. All those in favor of moving the question, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying no. The question has been moved. We will now vote on Article 34. Article 34 requires 2/3 for adoption. Counters, please count.
Thank you.
Great point. Article 34 needs 2/3. It is Article 34 as amended. There was an amendment that was approved. So all those in favor of Article 34 as amended, please rise. Grandstand first. He was good. He should have spoken a lot earlier. What was he waiting for? All right. All those opposed to Article 34 as amended, please rise. Oh my goodness. Article 34, as amended, is, there were 89 yes votes, 47 no votes, there were 91 votes needed for adoption. The article is defeated.
Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
20 hands raised for recount.
I need to see 20 hands for a recount. All right, hold on one second.
Was there a procedural defect, wasn't it? Was there a procedural defect?
Mrs. Garrett?
Mr. Moderator,
Yes.
I never heard of a recount at an open town meeting. There is a process for reconsideration if it's qualified for it. It's in the back of the book.
Yeah, we were just discussing that. Unless there's a procedural defect, there is no vehicle to have a recount. Article 35. I have a question first of all.
Dustin Weir, 426 Chandler Street. Am I correct that the motion to move the question was raised during a point of order. Could I have just a check on whether or not that's proper? And a check on my recollection of the events 10 minutes ago.
The question got moved twice. The first speaker moved the question, but he did so after speaking, so I didn't accept that moving of the question. And when Mr. Gillen came up and moved the question, he simply moved the question, so I accepted that request.
Thanks for the check.
You're welcome. Article 35.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Sadly, being that Article 34 failed to be voted in, we would withdraw Article 35.
All right, so there's a motion to withdraw Article 35. All those in favor of withdrawing Article 35, please signify by saying aye. Are there any opposed? Mr. Cosmerski. Article 35 is withdrawn. Mr. Cosmerski, can I have a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I motion to adjourn the May 3rd, 2021 annual town meeting sine die.
Motion to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed signify by saying no. Annual town meeting is adjourned.